Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. For those of you who have just joined us and could not attend the sessions earlier, the recordings of those sessions should be up on the platform soon. You can catch it there. We are super excited about the next session, a panel discussion on how have impact investments remodeled themselves and become more resilient. This session is going to be moderated by Mukesh Sharma, co-founder and managing director at Mentora Venture Advisors. Back. For those of you who have just joined us and could not attend the sessions earlier, the recordings of the session will be up on the platform soon. You can catch it there. We are super excited about the next by Mukesh Sharma, co-founder and managing.
Over to you, Mukesh. I'm sorry, there is some technical difficulty here. Over to you.
Thank you. It's great to be here with all of you. We are going to talk about how the entrepreneurs, dealt with a difficult year, 2020. Abhishek, there's some disturbance from your side, probably. Just mute when not speaking. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so we're going to talk about the last year, 2020. Yeah, this was a year full of crises and challenges. It tested our resilience and our ability to bounce back. Hidden within all the disruptions were amazing opportunities to reinvent ourselves and our organizations. Today, we're going to be speaking with three amazing entrepreneurs who did a great job reinventing their organizations. In 2020, the world economy shrank for the first time in 100 years. The Indian economy declined by more than 25% at the peak of the lockdown. But all the entrepreneurs we're talking to today, they all delivered better financial performance than the year before. What is great about them is not only their performance, they're special for the passion and commitment that they bring to improving the quality of healthcare and education in our country. I've been one of their biggest fans with a first-hand experience of their perseverance, not only during the pandemic, but over the years. As Warren Buffett would say, if we are ever in a sinking boat and you can save only one of us, just swim to any of them and you'll make the world a better place. So with that background, let's get started. Kavish, let's start with you. You have spent the last decade passing on the gift of and the passion of reading that is so close to your heart. So tell us about your work.
Thank you, Mukesh, for that great analogy of a sinking boat. Feel supremely responsible and grateful to the fact that I could stick to the wicket for something that I truly love doing the most. I grew up as a little one with only books and cows around me. And to be in a situation wherein today I'm able to gift reading to millions of children is a privilege. Just quickly about what we do, I have met two kinds of professionals always in these Zoom windows and earlier in meetings. One, who owed all their success to reading, and two, who regret that they are not avid readers. Now, if this is what reading is to all of us at our peak of our careers, why is it still that 9 out of 10 children, even in urban private schools in countries like India, are reading below grade levels? There is something wrong. And that's what we are working towards. How can we make reading happen by design rather than leaving it to chance is our simple goal. And to do that, we have a full stack solution from pedagogy to certification. Currently, we work with 500,000 children, and the desire is in the next 3 years to become the global gold standard for learning English as second language, where reading is the central pillar. Look forward to sharing more through this panel.
Great. Thank you, Kavish. Abhishek, doctors and health workers were frontline soldiers against this invisible enemy. While you're not a practicing doctor, you are no less a corona warrior. At the peak of pandemic, you were in hospitals trying to help your doctor friends who were all leading this fight in Mumbai, which was, as we know, was worst affected city in our country. So tell us about all the great work that Biosense has been doing and your plans for the future.
Sure, Mukesh, thank you. So Biosense is an organization and we focus on what we call ABCD, Affordable Basic Connected Diagnostics, specifically point of care diagnostics, which help us deliver quality diagnostics in areas which have a problem with access. Currently, our diagnostics are used in about 50,000 clinics across the country, both in public and private, uh, across a spectrum of diseases like anemia, diabetes, and more recently, COVID. And I think it was a once in a lifetime opportunity in 2020 to see something like the pandemic unfold. I don't think two generations, or at least, yeah, about three generations before us have not seen such an event. So it was great learning for the organization. It was great learning for me personally, and looking forward to talk more.
Great. Thank you, Abhishek. Chitra, let's talk about Chrysalis. You are in education more than an entrepreneur, and you've done a commendable job passing on this DNA across your organization. So tell us about your dream for every child and your dream for reinventing the way we all look at and deliver education to our children.
Yeah, namaste, and thanks, Mukesh. I think, like you said, I always wonder if I'm what I am. I think we all look at who I am, and I always wonder. At least I've started with what I am. Yes, I'm an educator at heart, and Chrysalis was born. I think every nation has two major problems to solve in education. One is access to every child in the country for quality for education, and the second is access to quality education. So right from the founding years, I've been very passionate about quality in education. And I think quality has a spectrum, right? I mean, making them, numeracy, literacy to what perhaps Chrysalis is doing in terms of whole child development. Our goal and dream is to awaken the human potential in every child. And this I realized, and I continue to realize, is a big audacious goal, but I think a goal that is extremely important. When it comes to what exactly Chrysalis does, we work and we chosen to work with schools because we believe that's where true transformation happens. To me, school is where the wholesome nutrition of education is given to the child. Perhaps other modes can be vitamin supplements. And so we choose to work with schools, transforming the school to first understand what is the true goal of education, and then provide the necessary skills and methodologies to every stakeholder. So I just want to say here that while there are many educational companies and we respect everybody's contribution, the paradigm shift perhaps Chrysalis wants to be bringing to this landscape of education is, move from layers of exam readiness and perhaps job readiness to something more deep, seeding what I would say the seed of the unlimited human potential in every child. And so that's why we've chosen the early years and primary years. We call it the formative years to work. And like you say, our humble contribution has been not only to change or bring in a DNA for this within the organization, but currently with about 300,000 children and all the hundreds of schools that are hosting them. So it's a big dream and ambition, and happy to say that we feel it's a very, very powerful journey and a soulful journey personally for me.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Chitra. Now, I'd like to talk to each of you about the impact of last year on your ecosystem, right? On your organization, on your customers, other stakeholders that you deal with. Starting with Abhishek. Abhishek, you are a rare species. You're both an engineer and a doctor. I've seen you enjoy tinkering in your lab and also seen you enjoy company of doctors and the health workers. So tell us, where did you spend most of the last year? Were you tinkering in lab? Were you in hospitals? And how did you help your organization and the whole ecosystem deal with the turmoil?
Sure. So Mukesh, looking back, I think there were two distinct kind of shocks that came in to the ecosystem, and I'm speaking from a company perspective. The first was a demand shock, which essentially we started seeing in the last 2 weeks of March, where hospitals, clinics, laboratories were essentially shut down. And within the hospital ecosystem, there were essentially two kind of hospitals. One is who were seeing COVID patients, and ones that were not seeing COVID patients. And the ones that were not seeing COVID patients were essentially shut down for a pretty long period of time, which is unprecedented. So this was one side. And we could see symptoms of this in our customers. I could see it in our friends and family, where people were not willing to go to their hospitals to see patients, and even if they were, patients were not willing to come to hospitals because they were scared of COVID. So this was the demand side of things. On the other side, there was also a supply shock. Our vendors were shut down. Biosense at that point was about 130 people, and most of our production employees had either gone back home or were not willing to come to office. So I think we were stuck in a unique position where there was a demand shock and a supply shock, like most of us. So we started on the demand side. We actually went out to hospitals. We asked people, it's okay if you're not buying our regular stuff or you're not using it. Where are you stuck? And we just made a list of things that people want and a list of things that we could do, because you also have less people, so you can choose to do very few things. And what we started with was something as simple as manufacturing swabs. At that point, swabs were not manufactured in India. Most of it was imported. So in the middle of the pandemic, in the first couple of weeks of April, we started with one SKU, that is to make a throat and nasal swab. And over the course of the last 9 months, we added about 12 new products to the list of products that Biosense already had. So we started with the demand side, but then I think where we were successful in was in absolutely point execution on the supply side, because logistics was broken. So you literally had to break every single action, no matter, it could be as simple as getting your goods transported from point A to point B, but that also needed a lot of planning during the pandemic. So we were able to execute it well. One thing that I am personally proud of is that in 2020, about 30% of the tests done in India were done on Biosense swabs. So that I'm personally very, very proud of, and something which we had no idea how to make before the pandemic. Mukesh, you're on mute.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah, that's great work, Abhishek. 12 new products, 30% of tests of the country of India's size. An amazing work, getting execution right with all demand supply shocks. Let's hear from Chitra. Chitra, it was a difficult year for students. They enjoy going out, right? They enjoy going out, running around, peer learning and interactions with teachers, such a big part of their life. And we saw parents struggle. They were struggling to keep their children engaged and learning at home. Teachers struggled with virtual engagement. So how did Chrysalliance cope with these changes, and how did you help students and teachers deal with this situation?
Yeah, Mukesh, I think March 2020, I'll not forget. Usually we sometimes think that, we can get into the deep side of the pool. I got into the deepest side of the pool, but chrysalis, I would say. But more interestingly, when you look back, I'm using the word interestingly, we've had about 1,000 schools along with us in the deepest end of the pool, So we had to kind of bring everyone up along with us, because they were looking at us for help, naturally so. Everybody would call us and say, hey, what's going to happen? We are at a dead end and all of that. So I would say that it was a big traumatic week or so. But I think I'm very grateful that, the whole organization, first there was a lot of acceptance of the situation. And then we said we are not going to freeze. We are going to get active, agile, think of various things like most companies did, right? But what we did essentially was, started listening I agree with Abhishek. The point is to listen to our customers. Exactly where do they have problems, and instead of throwing some solutions at them. So we started talking to many school leaders, asking them exactly, what the problem was. And we had to come up with a solution that we put together in about 40 days, called it Chrysalis Home. And it was a very simple remote learning platform. We knew that our stakeholders were not, the high tech kind of people, the teachers. You are talking about children missing school. Last 1 year, I've been hearing so much about teachers, dreaming about the school bell ringing. They are really missing the chitter chatter and all of that, right? So we had to not only give them solutions, hard solutions to continue learning. And we believed from the bottom of our heart that though that, people said that you are after all in the primary and early years, why should children even be doing something? We knew that this engagement and learning cannot stop, right? So we had to really look at the parents and ensure that the parents were not overburdened, look at the teachers and not make them feel overwhelmed, look at the school leaders who were actually running from pillar to post. And we put all of it together through this platform. And end of, I think, July, we had onboarded about 150,000 children onto the remote learning platform. That was, I would say, a milestone of victory, but added responsibility, because we felt that we cannot give something inferior or something just to keep it going. We had to really ensure that, because we were talking about little hearts there, right? So we had to ensure that they were getting the right kind of inputs, teaching, learning. So it was I would say it continues to be a roller coaster ride, but but looking back, I think our agility to get a solution going and ensure that all stakeholders remain sane and loved and cared for, I think that was the biggest responsibility in us. We had to make teachers, we launched something called Wellness Wednesdays. And I think we've done about 30 weeks of Wellness Wednesdays. Every Wednesday, we call teachers together, do Zumba, do yoga, do meditation. And, we really felt that apart from our core stuff of teaching, learning, we had to actually be that supporting pillar for our schools. So it was an amazing journey internally from, kind of giving up, what is this? I mean, nothing is going to move to where we are today, with a very, very more interesting solution, great partnership, and what we can claim to be the best blended learning program for our ecosystem, Mukesh. It's been a great 9 months, 10 months, I would say.
Yeah, that is so good to hear, Chitra. 40 days to come up with a product and implement it with 150,000 students. There's no mean task. I think anybody who's dealt in education will say that this is still an amazing achievement. Kavish, you had already decided to pivot before this pandemic hit us. So were you all ready for the shift? And how did you prepare and motivate your team? Was this disruption a blessing in disguise for you? As you look back, will 2021 turn out to be a stone that became milestone for you all?
I think, Mukesh, the question is already loaded with the answer itself. I think looking back 2020, no matter how the world went through, definitely it'll be a milestone for Stones to Milestones as a turning point. As a parent, as well as a professional, I think reading is as simple as this quote, which is read what you love till you love reading, right? It's as simple as that. But having said that, unfortunately, reading is not even in the kind of a consideration set even for educators and parents for majority of the country. Now, in that context, that's one. Second context I would add before I could make sense to the people who are experiencing us for the first time is we wanted to get to the child, and our 3G is ages 3 to 12. Now, to get to that child, we need to either hold the hands of a parent or a school leader. And pre-pandemic, 95 to 97% of our revenue came through schools, wherein schools would buy our program and in turn integrate into your curriculum itself, right? And as Mukesh mentioned, right after the Christmas break, mid-Jan, we had started our B2C pilots. And that pilot was, now that we have got to the child through the school, can we see how is the experience of going to that child through the parent? And those pilots were done primarily as a simple model. Our app, Freedom app, was given for 1 month free to the parent, and after which they had to upgrade to a paid subscription. It was a simple model. We were converting paid users at the rate of about 4.5% pre-pandemic. And right then, when pandemic lockdown happened, we had to move significantly. Why? One, we were expecting our school revenue to go up from X to 5X from April 2020, while we ended up being at half X, half of even previous year. Second, our Freedom app subscription could have continued growing, but one can imagine in India to have app subscription as a revenue model doesn't even work for OTT platforms. And hence, we said, let's make the app subscription zero. Let's make our app freely available. And that's our responsible behavior to the users and the community at this moment, saying that at least something is available to them with unlimited access. And that became a great segue for us to grow our user base on the app by 4x in less than 3.5, 4 months. Third, we were already offering our pedagogy to schools. So we said, can we take this directly to children? And we had already done early pilots of our live tutoring pre-pandemic, almost like 30,000 weekly revenue we were getting pre-pandemic for our live tutoring. And when we decided that let's focus fully on live tutoring as a revenue, while the app is a source of getting children to learn to read through the self-learning process, it worked out phenomenally. I'll give you where we stand today. From post-pandemic, we have been growing at 40% month on month consistently till date. And today, what was 3% of our revenue last financial year, 75% of our revenue comes from B2C. And we are more than 6 times the size of operations than what we were last year. Second, I think what it gave us was a courage to build a very different muscle in the company. We already were a technology driven company, but today, if you look at our team composition, there are more techies and data scientists and product engineers than what we had when we were a B2B front ending school operation. That was the second shift. And third, which is significantly important in terms of how we moved, I think lockdown happened around 23rd, 24th of March, somewhere around the 20th March. And on 31st March, we had our town hall called All Hearts Meet. That's how we call our town halls. And in that town hall, we had announced 3 things. One, no one will be fired and everyone will work from home for the next 6 months with no expectation to travel to any school, any client, because everyone was concerned about their own health and safety within the team. Second, we had 90% people working on B2B. We moved all of them to B2C, except for 3 members in the team. And even till date, our B2B team is less than 5, while the B2C has grown to a 170 member team. And third, we had to take the business model call, saying if we have not got the orders confirmed, stop chasing schools because they are in a very difficult situation and reading was never a painkiller for them. Let's not pursue it right now. Let's go after B2C revenue fully. And that one single focus on B2C got us where we are today. And I think in our future roadmap also, Mukesh, 3 years down the line, I think B2B would be less than 5% of our revenue. So that's a big milestone year for us, 2020.
Nice. Lot of good work, Kavish, and I know a lot of hard work went into delivering this. So great job. There's a question from the audience. I think Kavish answered part of it, which is after remodeling for the lockdown, how do you see the life of these new offerings? Will you continue with them? Kavish, you already answered this, but if Chitra or Abhishek, either or both of you want to go ahead, please go ahead with a quick response to this question.
Yeah, probably it'll be a continuation of what Kavi says, because both of us are in education and, I think it is, I do think that the blended approach is going to be the future. The National New Education Policy, the NEP 2020 has spoken about it. And we have also seen that an increasing involvement of parents And I would also say from a teacher's side, right, there is a new enlightenment that they can actually see children learning by themselves, which they would never have let go pre-pandemic. You know, they were always like, I have to tell them what to do. And today they are saying that, oh my God, we never know that they are actually, they can be self-motivated. So all this is going to bring a very new approach to education, Mukesh, which is going to be a blended learning. And I'm so excited about it, because here I'm not talking about blended as only technology and offline, etc. When we're talking about hybrid models, we are talking about remote, the ability for a child to self-study, the various stakeholders taking turns to, you know, support the child. So I would not want to miss this opportunity. I mean, no education company should miss this opportunity, where there has been a behavior change, but you know, we cannot, it's like this elastic thing, right? I mean, if it comes back, then it never goes again. So I think we need to ensure that whatever good has come out of this, we should take that further. So I do think that our own offering of what seemed like a pandemic solution has now become a mainstay in our company. And there's so much excitement within the company among our schools. All our partner schools are, you know, sharing the same sentiment. They are telling us that I think this is the way forward. They have their own concerns about screen time, ability for parents to give a device to the child, and all of that. So Chrysalis, I think, has also gotten into solving variety of problems, I would say, and looking at it as a nice project for solving the jigsaw puzzle of bringing about a paradigm shift in the model itself, model of delivery, I would say, where it has, you know, huge scope in my mind for not just B2B to grow, but B2B to C, and perhaps like Kavi shared, even the B2C to grow. It's about us, how we make this framework work, and what makes sense in terms of the impact. And of course, I think what Chrysalis cares about is the whole child development. And if we are able to, and we are confident about it, we're able to bring this with a lot of awareness among all the stakeholders, I think it will be a huge, huge contribution to every child in our country, Mukesh. So I see that this has come to stay, and it is our responsibility to ensure that this becomes a sustainable and a growing model.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. I think this has lasted just so long. 1 year is just too long a time for these, you know, behaviors to become permanent. Kavish, there's a question for you where you said, you know, reading is not a priority. I think the audience misunderstood it as not a priority anymore. They think not anymore, but I think it has never been a priority. So do you want to put a quick word about, you know, reading, importance of reading, and, you know, is it really a priority? And if not, why not? And why should it be a priority?
Yeah, so first let me clarify, it is a priority for people who belong to one of the two categories, as I said. Either you owe your success to reading, or you regret that you're not a reader. Unfortunately, the way the learning curriculum is structured, and Chitra would be able to validate this even further, three things about the learning structure. First, children get into English medium school with 1/5 the active vocabulary that they should have in English to learn in English medium, right? So that learning gap is right at the outset for children when they get into school. Second, because our examination system is written and written work is visible, the whole emphasis for early education on English is around writing and speaking. So imagine if a child doesn't even know this language, how do you expect the child to write and speak, is the second point. And third is, if you look at all the various ways of acquiring language, reading is the most potent way because of two reasons. One, reading can't happen without a sound being attached to it. You need to create a sound and make some meaning out of it. So that's one. And second, the speed with which you can acquire a language when you're reading is far, far higher compared to when you were to write and learn or speak and learn. So that's predominantly why it's necessary. And what we are saying when we say it's not yet a priority is two things, how we are solving for that. One, when we look at our marketing communication, we have to communicate what parents and schools understand. So our communication has two messages: the ultimate English company. It doesn't say reading, it says the ultimate English company. That's what is understood. And second, we will make your child a confident, accurate communicator in English. I think those are the things that people understand. The intangible but the lifetime change we do through that process is reading becomes a lifetime gift for the child.
Let me tell you, there are a lot of people who fall in both categories. I am one of them. I've read a lot, but I still regret not having read enough. So there's a question for Abhishek. Abhishek, there's a question for you. Is the demand for basic items like swab, etc., will reduce? And shouldn't one see these kinds of demand as just something driven by a black swan event, which will not sustain beyond it?
Absolutely, it is actually a black swan event, and there are two things, Mukesh, that I want to point out to, which have fundamentally shifted, especially for health entrepreneurs. One is molecular diagnostics has received a shot in the arm like never before. Before the pandemic, you probably had 200, 250 labs doing molecular diagnostics. Now it is at least 15 times that. And after the COVID demand goes out, it will be replaced by HIV, HPV, tuberculosis testing, malaria testing, because the capex is already there. The people who do the machines are already there, and you need everything from swabs to RNA extraction to RT-PCR to lab-based technologies. So molecular diagnostics as a market has probably become 10x in a year. And maybe it's a black swan event, but I don't see that demand going. Maybe the COVID demand will shift towards more accurate malaria testing demand. Yeah, but fundamentally as a segment, it will always be there. So that is one. The second shift that has happened, and which we don't talk enough, but almost every company has understood this, is that you cannot rely on one country to be your primary source of supplies. It could be raw materials for hospitals, it could be medical devices. So there is a deliberate shift from companies and ecosystems to diversify their supply chain. It's not saying that it's all Atmanirbhar Bharat, it's all out of China. It's not like that, but de-risk the supply chain. And this is an opportunity for manufacturing hardware firms in India. These two shifts have happened, and these are irreversible. I don't see both of these going back in a reasonable period of time. So while swabs may be a black swan event, but if a company has understood how to make high volume plastic articles in that, I'm just drawing a line, that core competence is something that will be needed in multiple things in molecular diagnostic. It could be tubes, it could be caps, it could be anything. But fundamentally, the market has grown 10x in the last 1 year, and it's not going to go back so soon. It will shift from COVID for sure.
Yeah, no, many times some of these things take 5 to 10 years to happen, Abhishek. And you're right, some of these things happen all of a sudden in a year, and the competencies of many of the companies and the whole ecosystem just got so much better.
Absolutely, Mukesh. There was a third thing. I'll take a few seconds to do it. It probably took 10 years for doctors to get into teleconsultations, but in the last year, the number of teleconsultations from the doctor side and the patient side has probably grown 100x. That I don't know if that will stay or not, but these are three big changes that have happened, and none of them are going back, I think.
Nice. Thank you. Thanks, Abhishek, for sharing these insights with all of us. Let's now switch gears and talk about some of the other challenges. We talked about your ecosystem, your customers, but your organizations also went through a lot of stress, right? You were not able to meet customers, you're not able to sell. Cash was not getting collected, right? Schools were shut, fee was not getting collected, payments were not getting made. Uh, you know, cash flow was not moving, profitability, revenue, investments. I mean, there was complete mess all around, right? Uh, Chitra, I know that your authentic work and connect over the years with the schools and your vendor ecosystem around you has built a very supportive, family, I would say, around you. But still, these were unprecedented times, right? And I'm sure all of that must have been tested in a big way. So, what did you change? There was no cash in the system. How did you survive? how did you raise money at peak of the pandemic?
Yeah, Mukesh, I must say, first time in my entrepreneurial journey, I had to give appointments to my vendors, who would come and ask me for payments. It's normally so smooth that I used to tell my finance people, what are you putting me through? So, I mean, that aside, I think what you're saying is right. There was a stress in every part of the system, right? The collection, and we knew that it was a problem with everybody. I mean, schools were not collecting fee at that point of time, so we had to also show that much empathy and care. And when it came to our own people, right, they first of all, they had to manage change. They were all of us were in fear. And though, like Kavish said, we also said, no, nobody is going to move out. I mean, in the lockdown, there was no other choice. But we had even told them that many months you will not be moving around. And that itself was a big change, because 50-60% of our people are always in schools. And as much as children love schools, they loved being there in the customer's place, in our partner school's place. So it was overall, I think at one level, we had to hold ourselves strong together. And at the other level, we had to keep on this motivation thing. But I think one big eye opener for me, for myself in this period, was all the work that we had done all these years with the culture and people. And I would pass this wisdom, if I may call it so, to every entrepreneur here, however small you are. You may think that when I start up, I don't really need to be focusing on something called culture and all that. And I have been derided, when I started 4-5 people and I would talk about values, culture, and people will be like, why are you saying all this, But I could say that legacy we built brought about a huge peace around the system. Everybody came up and voluntarily said, don't worry about, remuneration. We are willing to support you. We are with you in this. And schools also, I would say that many of them, understood what we were doing. So whenever they had a chance to collect fee, they would call us and say that, this is where we are. We'll try to, do that. We had vendor empathy, because I think we've had a clean, I would say clean history. So all this helped us. So I would say that none of these good things just land up from the sky, right? I mean, you have worked hard and toiled. So that was a real, I would say, a message. And it only added to our responsibility to continue that in stronger ways. With respect to, I mean, this is more perhaps like what I was talking to you is more from a mindset and softer aspects. From the harder aspect, of course, we had to go to our banks, renegotiate a few things. We also tapped on our investors. And then we went to, we did a lot of, I would say, search on how to manage the next few months, because we saw opportunity and we did not want to let go and be defeatist in our attitude. So we had to take aggressive measures. I mean, sometimes in the night, I would wonder, why am I going more aggressive in such a stage? But I think it helped to do that. With respect to the investment, I think there was a stroke of grace, or whatever you would call it. We had already started some conversations with for some bridge investment that we were looking at, though we knew that was not the big series at that point of time. So there again, I think the choice of the investor made a lot of difference to us, right? I mean, even before the pandemic, all our investors, including Mentora Ventures and, all of us, I think the core of this partnership, investment partnership, was in the impact, right? And I'm glad to be saying that in this forum. So yes, return on investment is very important. Sustainability, growth is very important. But the core was in the fact that we were in impact business. We were changing lives. We were changing the country and its legacy. So I think that makes a whole difference, right? So we had complete support of even this new investor who would understand that this may not be the best time to make an investment, but since we had, they saw the continued spirit in the organization. They saw that we were not, getting chickening out, and all this made that investor faith in us come a long way. And so that was a big relief, Mukesh. So 2 points, 2 messages, if there are entrepreneurs out there. Excellence in everything that we do, right? I mean, there will be moments. I think entrepreneurship is a roller coaster moment. I know Kavish, Abhishek, all of us know that there are ups and downs in it, but keeping the faith and taking along the community, uplifting the community. It can be internally your people or your customers or the larger ecosystem. That genuineness, that authenticity, if we are able to bring as a goodwill, I think in tough times, all these come to your aid. So I think that was what pulled us out of from drowning in the pool. And along with us, many schools also came along. I would say we are still wobbling in the pool. I don't think we are swimming beautifully yet. But I can see that, I can visualize that we are going to be cruising and swimming beautifully. And I must express my gratitude to every stakeholder in Chrysalis for being through us through these very tough times.
Yeah, I think it speaks a lot about the kind of culture you created, Chitra. So thank you for sharing the ingredients of how that is done. Kavish, last couple of years were difficult. I mean, everything that could be thrown at you was thrown at you. So, tell us how did you and your team deal with it?
So I think pretty similar situation to Chitra in terms of the first quarter was very challenging, given we were also largely B2B centered in terms of revenue. And when your revenue is hit by half and your collection is hit by 90%, with no funds in the bank, and Mukesh, you know that where we were in December in terms of funds, we were running for month-on-month expenses, literally, to the extent that I ended up giving certain loans to the company at that point in time, right? So that was the situation pre-pandemic. And I think nonetheless, what was significantly important, apart from whatever Chitra shared around vendor empathy, team empathy, which was available because of the culture we had institutionalized. And I think that's pretty common for at least Mentera portfolio of companies. I can say that all of us have a certain kind of a value system in terms of people first, right? As in, if we take care of our people, they will take care of our customers. And I think from that standpoint, unquestionable faith on every company here that we will take care of that part, right? So we get that reciprocation from these stakeholders anyhow. So a couple of things that I did in the first quarter and continued doing till we had sailed through a slightly better time in terms of trajectory: over communication. I think literally every week I was holding All Hearts Meet, our town hall, and it would begin with a song and dance. Somebody like me who has inhibition around dance would be on a Zoom window dancing on a song, right? Because we had to infuse them with positivity no matter what was happening. We started things like Sathi circles because you just don't know what was happening with their families, their health, and so much of unpredictability, right? So we created Sathi circles where the top leaders would be available at their choice, right? So a lot of cultural practices were started around that. Third, we were aware that B2C, which was 30,000-40,000 weekly revenue, less than any one team member's salary, we would need a lot of time to get traction on that. So we, instead of waiting for our Series A process, which we were in the process of raising, we opened a bridge round, and truly grateful, right? As into one of our investors, of course, Mentera helped us in getting the right connections, but Unreasonable Capital is one of the investors. They kind of straight away wrote a $500,000 commitment. And from there on, we could raise a $2.5 million round for us to really sustain through the tough times. And that gave me a lot of confidence, not about the fact that we could raise capital, about the fact that we had a different plan that we presented to a new set of investors, including ours, and they trusted us. They felt this was the plan to go after. And I think from there, that moment onwards, there has been no looking back in terms of today. I think we have forgotten we were a B2B company primarily.
Nice. Abhishek, you have been through all of this, and I'm sure you are so happy to not having to deal with term sheets and SHAs and no no Series A and Series Bs and no bridges, right? So I think you were in a different world altogether, right? I think this was the
I
first
think
time we heard government and customers paying advance, and I think cash was not an issue for you. But what was your challenge and how did you deal with it?
I think we've seen our share of bridges, Mukesh, in the in the past decade. But I think we were very lucky. Biosense just went through an acquisition 2 months before we heard the word pandemic after in a long period of time. And we were acquired by Tulip Diagnostics, which is part of the larger PerkinElmer uh, group of companies. And so we had the backing of much larger business houses. So cash was not an issue. Of course, we curtailed our expenses. We ensured that we don't blow money away. So fortunately, cash was not an issue. And once we figured out what to sell and how to make, uh, again cash was not an issue because supply was a problem, at least in April, May, and June. So whoever could supply, that supply was actually bought at a premium, uh, both in terms of price and in terms of payment terms. So fortunately for us, cash wasn't an issue. What we are looking to do is how do we use the resources and competencies that have been built in the last 12 months to accelerate the growth of Biosense. I think that is the big challenge that we have right
Thanks. Uh, let's talk a little bit about sales and planning and hitting the target. This was not the time, right? I mean, anybody who made budget, I don't even know if anybody worked through budgets or sheets or targets because you were dealing with different challenges. Both Chitra and Kavish, you alluded to it. You had to dance, right? Numbers, you couldn't dance around numbers. You had to just literally dance. So let's talk about this. How does one deliver in this kind of a scenario where, I mean, you can't focus on targets, you can't focus on goals, you can't focus on budgets, but still, you're running out of money. So there's no choice, but maybe you are worrying about it, but how do you not share it with the team? Do you really share it? What goes on? Maybe we hear that. Let's start from you, Chitra.
Yeah, I think Mukesh, I wanted to ask you what is the target, So you're right. We had to put everything in the back burner and say we care for you. And I really liked what Kavish said. That's what we also did. I think agility and nimble, being nimble was the key, right? So we had to over communicate. Everybody, we had to first tell them that your life is important, the vision is important, and prioritize them accordingly. So while I would say the traditional OKRs and KPIs and all that was put aside, we still had like weekly goals, I would say. We did not want to lose control. We did not want to be going with the flow like that, right? We needed to know what we are heading towards. So what we started doing was function wise, we would have like weekly check-ins. And the same thing we passed on to the schools as well. We used to have weekly, monthly check-ins with our schools. So the whole thing cascaded, right? We knew what we wanted. We would set the goal for a shorter period of time with no great ambition of, saying this is what we want to achieve at the end of the year or whatever. But we knew that we had to do that so that we are not meandering. We knew that we needed a direction for it. So that way, I think the whole thing came to very agile planning and also setting certain, if I may say, outrageous goals, Mukesh. That's why I said, we really went aggressive in this period. We were careful not to get into a regressive mode. We said, no, I think we can do it. And we would set some outrageous goal, but giving comfort to people that it's okay to fail. Because there was an unpredictability, right? These were not very well carved out. We didn't know what was happening externally. We didn't know at that point of time. Everybody said schools may reopen in September, October, and then it goes on and on until today. It's not reopened. So this was a time when we had to really look at shorter span of time frames and then say, let's put our heads together and say, what am I going to achieve? and what am I going to work towards in this particular week? I think that really helped. And I think as an organization, I've always felt we were a little lagging behind in terms of agility, right? And I think came the big thud of a slap from the pandemic, and we all realized the importance. So today I think there's a balance. We have become a much more agile company, and and everybody, I would say everybody in every function, they've realized that these things are we need to be adaptable and move towards something that we may not even be aware of. So we set an overall sense of direction. We said these are the priorities. For instance, we said being in touch with every customer is very, very critical, because we can, it shouldn't be that we are just calling the customer to ask them for payment, right? I mean, we cannot say that no, school is not operating, you cannot really do anything. So we turned everything, we turned everything as virtual, like most companies did, and we were surprised. We were surprised that school principals and school leaders who would hardly meet us if we go and sit in the lobby for 1.5 hours, they started coming on Zoom meetings and all of that, right? So we had more access. I think in these 9 months, I have met more number of customers than I've ever met, in a year. And all that in the comfort of each other's place. We conducted weekly webinars, Mukesh. That was a big thing. And we would have close to 700, 800 school leaders coming, attending the webinars. Then I realized that, they were actually sitting at home with not much to do, otherwise at school, they are so busy. So there were a lot of opportunities in this dismay, right? So to sum up, I think when you ask about planning, there was planning, but very short time frames of planning. And I think that was a key to setting a direction and not meandering, like I said.
Yeah, as we say in cricket, let's take one over at a time, one session at a time. Abhishek, sitting at home was not an option for you and your team, and you've been through your own cycles of planning, hitting targets, missing targets, all of that. And Mumbai was not an easiest of the places to go out and get business. How did you get business in this scenario? How did you get your team to really deliver?
So Mukesh, the first thing we did is we suspended all targets, and we said that we are not going to give any targets till for the next 3 months at least. So that is the first thing that we did. So expectations were set to 0. The second thing that we did is we actually forgot about the larger team, and we created a small core group of actually 10 people. And from sales, production, quality, the entire team was essentially just 10 people. And because we did not have our regular employees in April, May, and June, we actually took in contract labor to the tune of about 300 people and trained them during the pandemic. So we literally, size wouldn't matter. I think one thing that has happened in the pandemic is that size of the company doesn't matter. It's really, a small group of people who come together and pull it through. We suspended all expectations, and then we took 1 week at a time. So we just used to plan from Monday to Saturday, and Sunday was a holiday, even in the peak of the pandemic. I think that really helped. But 1 week at a time, a core group of 10 people, and that is about it. That's what we did.
Nice. Let's now talk about your really big hits and misses during the last year, and sort of the things that change the trajectory of your organization. And also in this process, you end up learning so much about yourself and your organization. So I'll start with Kavish. Kavish, your app has been consistently receiving top ratings. My daughter has been a super user, and without hesitation, I would recommend your app to everyone watching this panel in whichever part of the world they're watching it. So I think a lot of great work has gone into delivering that. But tell us about, what is your most proudest thing about your organization? Abhishek told us about his. What is yours? What was your biggest hit and biggest miss this year?
I think Mukesh, this kind of fits into both your questions, but people who are downloading, please get the spelling right. If it's FREADOM, right? So, in terms of the biggest hits and misses, Mukesh, today when I look back, I can write a playbook on how do you perform during crisis. I remember my first communication to the team was, I will take care of you as a family, but when we are on the field, we will operate like a sports team. And in a sports team, only winning matters. There is nothing else that matters. And keeping that in mind, we actually double down on something called one OKR, including me to the accountant. Everyone had just one KR to be tracked on a literally daily basis. So I think one of the biggest hits for us was the whole shift in the DNA of the organization to become a high performance culture versus being just a mission oriented mad fellows working together. I think is a big hit. It's going to give us benefits for the rest of our lifetime, and Stones to Milestones will be 10x faster in its mission just because of that one hit. One of the myths is I have this whole optimism all over in my body in every cell, and that optimism tends to, the way I look at my cash flow planning, I think there is a lot of reality check it has given me. I've had massive bad hits through the pandemic, even till last quarter, in terms of how I planned my cash flow. Just to give perspective to the audience, we were burning, let's say, X month on month, investment rate was X pre pandemic. Right now, it has gone to 10X. In a company where at the time of lockdown, my announcement to the team was, hey guys, only one goal, that is financial quarantine. In next 11 weeks, we will take the company to a financial quarantine of a financial break even. Imagine the company sitting at 10x investment rate than what it was pre-COVID. And I think that audacity, courage, optimism, I want to hold that, but I think that reality check is supremely important. I'm truly grateful to both Mukesh and Paul. I think the way they have put the guardrails around a courageous person like me was necessary. And I think I'm going to stick within the guardrails now.
Thanks, Kavish. Abhishek, you have gone through many ups and downs since you and Yogesh started Biosense in your dorm room at IIT Bombay. And from there, contributing 30% of stocks in the height of pandemic, the face of our country is a big achievement. You shared your proudest moment, but tell us about your big hits and misses.
So I think the biggest hit for Biosense, Mukesh, is that we became a 100 crore company, and not a flash year. I think we will deliver 100 crore top line this year as well. Fingers crossed. So that is something that we had a big dream for, and we were able to achieve it. From a miss perspective, I think the RT-PCR diagnostic, the core molecular diagnostics piece, I think we were 3 months late for the party. We eventually made a molecular diagnostic division within Biosense, but we could have been faster. We could have, been more aggressive in either acquiring, these competencies or building these competencies. But I think we were 3 months too late.
Thanks, Abhishek. Chitra, you have not had to look at expertise outside your organization since you started Chrysalis, but something made you do that. So what was that? What were your big hits and your misses?
That was the hit, Mukesh. I think I don't know whether I can logicize on how it came by, but it just came by, and today I can say that the partnerships we are striking is really, bringing a lot of synergy into the organization. I know I don't have much time, so I just want to keep that simple. Partnership was the biggest hit for us in terms of, understanding and going into the core competency of the organization and saying where else and how else can I build complementing things. Just want to say, Mrs. Yes, I think we could have done much more with the parents, our consumers, but we were more focusing on our school leaders, our customers. So that I think we could have done much better, because that is important, especially in the segment and niche we are in. So these are the two I would say pick as a hit and a miss.
Great, thank you. I think that brings us to the end of our session. And I will just conclude with what I started with. Now everyone knows that if there is a sinking boat and only one person to be saved, where should they run? So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, Mukesh, Chitra, Kavish, and Abhishek for a very engaging and interesting session. Up next, we have a session where we can learn about energy-enabled entrepreneurship. The session will have two interesting case studies presented by our entrepreneurs from the energy space, followed by a mind-invoking panel discussion. Also, at the networking lounge, we have two rooms opening up right now. Rajvinder from Fortis, Aman and Amrita from the Dayal Group are available for you. Thank you and see you again.